For those of you who have attended NextGen Club event before, it's great to have you back with us. And there are lots of new joiners this time. So if it is your first event, then it's absolutely fantastic that you've joined us this evening, and I hope that you gain something meaningful from our time together and that you attend future events that we hold. So by way of introduction, I'm Jenny Kitching. I form part of the PwC Africa Family Business Centre of Excellence, and I'm the NextGen lead for Africa. So just to inform everybody that this session is being recorded. And before I introduce today's guest panelists, I'm just going to go through a little bit of housekeeping. So we're going to run 5 polls throughout the session. So you'll see that the first poll is already up. When you see the polls, please can you answer the questions and submit your answers. We're going to have a couple of polls that are run. PwC also has the digital fitness app that has now become available to the public at large. So there you'll see the slide on the screen at the moment. So yeah, I was just explaining the NextGen education program that very sadly wasn't able to take place face-to-face in 2020, but it is taking the form of a blended learning and networking academy. And so please join up, register for that NextGen Academy. You'll be able to participate in all the virtual events that take place now for the rest of the year. So at PwC, we believe in the importance of supporting the next generation of family business leaders. Our motto for the NextGen Club is for you, and we provide a platform for next gens to network and to get together. So I'm sorry that we can't meet face to face, and this evening we're going to be exploring the 6 paradoxes of leadership. So first up we have Phillip Retief. Our second panelist is Anani, who joins us from Nigeria. Andrea is going to facilitate the panel discussion now, and without further ado, I apologize for the terrible connection. I will hand over to Andrea and the panel. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Hopefully my connection is fine and normal, but please let me know if there's a glitch. So just for those who didn't hear, this is supposed to be very interactive. So please ask any questions throughout the session in the Q&A box directed at us, and we'll pop the question straight to the panel. And if you could perhaps say who you want the question to go to, that would be amazing. So as we first noted in 2018, in our analysis of the 6 paradoxes of leadership, successful leaders must embody and negotiate a set of apparent contradictions in order to thrive in a rapidly changing world. They must have the confidence to project a clear strategy and the humility to correct course and recognize the need for change. They must also be as skillful at surveying the landscape from 30,000 feet as they are at making sure organizations functions well on the ground. They must remain rooted in the traditions that they made the organization successful while continuously embracing innovation. They should consider what they need their workforce to achieve and then effectively use enabling technology to help them do it. They have to think globally while acting locally, and they must demonstrate the ability to negotiate differing viewpoints toward a consensus while maintaining their integrity. As the world seeks systematically to repair and reconfigure from the collective trauma and damage being suffered due to COVID-19 and to prepare itself to be resilient in future, there's an urgent need for leaders to understand, accept, and embrace these paradoxes. So for the discussion, as Jenny said, we have Phillip, Mara, and Mika. Welcome again. Fantastic to have you here, and thank you so much for participating. So Mika and Phillip, will you please just give us a brief introduction of your family businesses that you work in, just for the attendees on the call? Maybe Phillip, you can start.
Thank you, Andrea. Lovely being here. Yes, Van Loveren Wines is in South Africa. For those of you who don't know where we are, we're about 150 kilometers directly east of Cape Town, in the Boland region of Robertson. We're a 3rd generation family business that started in 1937. And at the moment, the executive directors are all four family members and affectionately known as the Four Cousins, and it's one of our wine brands. And we are primarily in grape farming, agriculture, and obviously processing, winemaking, and then selling our product to the local and international market. Yeah, that's just a nice short brief, Andrea.
Thanks, Phillip. Nico?
Yes, our family business is called DPL Construction Limited. We're based in Lagos, Nigeria. The business is about 30, I'm currently in a transitionary role within the family business, easing out of operational activities within the family office and family business and moving into the chair of the family council. We're currently putting in place a lot more governance.
Thanks, Nico. Phillip and Nico, again, I'm going to start with Phillip. What do you think the attributes of an ideal leader is? Or attributes?
Andrea, that's a very wide question, and I thought about it. It definitely depends on the industry and business that you are in. I don't think the same leadership role applies to every business in the same manner, but in our world, I would say it's a combination of being soft but also hard at the same time, a good balance of that. Goal orientation, future thinking, strategy. I mean that's all the normal logical things you would think of. But us being in a family business, it does bring a subtle difference to a normal corporate approach in the sense that you have to be more sensitized to the way that you approach management and strategy and execution. And for me, the best way of doing that is to lead by example, earn the respect of your peers, your team, your family, and then at the same time trying to be a mentor where you can. So I would say the most important is to lead by example and earn the respect, and then you can apply all the other necessities.
Very true, and I agree. And Nico, and your view on it?
Yes, I agree completely with Phillip. In a family business world, the skills that are needed are slightly different. Empathy is a huge skill that is useful for leaders across industries, and especially in a family business setting where we have so many different stakeholders with different perspectives. And when we have empathy, it really is an enabler for collaboration, and it can really be empowering. I think also humility is really critical. So I was reading up the origins of the word leader actually is an old English word, which means to go before as a guide. But unfortunately, quite a lot of the time we use leadership to measure someone's, as a measure of success. And it's not necessarily so. It's really just as leaders, we're just there to provide directional signage to where the followers are supposed to go to so they can also arrive at a destination. And, being humble really allows psychological safety. And that's really critical for successful team building within the business and also within the family. I also think resilience is really important. There's a lot of conversation right now about anti-fragile in light of what's happening with the pandemic, but it's important to also realize that being resilient isn't the same as being stoic. It's being resilient is just the ability to bounce back from difficult situations like what we're in right now. And it does also require acknowledging these difficult situations, not burying one's head in the sand, but moving through them. And it really hinges off the back of a lot of inner leadership work, internal leadership, working on the leadership of one's emotions, mindset, getting very clear on one's purpose and values. And I really believe that it's only when we've been on that inner journey in knowing who we are and leading ourselves that we can actually lead others effectively.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Mara, so what do you see in businesses? Do you agree? Or would you like to add anything?
So I think, Andrea, I agree with everything that's been said. And I think where the challenge of, when you look at attributes of a leader, I think if we go back a few years, you had to have, all your sort of standard leadership attributes that, let's just say, were the normal set of skills that the leader had. And I think given the current times that we're living in, what we're needing from leaders is they need to have all of those attributes, plus they need to have new attributes. So just some of the words that you've raised, Nika, is like empathy and resilience and courage and agility are all leadership capabilities that you need to have now. But if you think back, if you were doing Management 101, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, you certainly weren't hearing those as being critical leadership attributes. So I think the expectation of the leader now is even greater than it ever was before, because you still got to have all those baseline skills, but then you've got to add the other ones on top. So I think just a few things that strike me, especially in the times we're living in, is that I think a leader now needs to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So your job as a leader is not predictable. And, I think we've seen enough in the last little while to understand that you at the moment are a leader that most probably previously you would have a strategic plan that was a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan. I mean, that might now be your sort of North Star, but you're having to be revisiting that on such a frequent basis. So I think that that agility is something that we're seeing. And I think also the ability, and maybe talking specifically in family businesses, because you are a lot more agile than some of your competitors that would be big corporate structures and slow and sluggish to move. I think that when we go through uncertain times, you can either see it as an opportunity or you can see it as a disaster. And I think from a family business perspective, to have that attribute to maximize and see how can I turn this negative thing into an opportunity and actually grow the business. So I think that's something. And then I suppose also in a family business, what we'd say, my last point would be around, it's a much more personal process when you're running a family business. Even though you may have grown exponentially in numbers, there's still that feeling of working for the owner of the business. And so I think sometimes decisions are hard to take. But I think what we'd say is that the role of the leader here is that you need to protect your people, not jobs. And I think that that's about, upskilling and equipping the people who work for you and really looking after them. And I think if you've got their best interests at heart, I think that'll go a long way in terms of buying you the loyalty and the commitment that you're looking for. Thanks.
Yeah, I think the upskilling is extremely important, especially in these times. So we have one question from the audience. So I'm going to again start with Phillip. What would you see as the biggest challenge for leaders bringing their workforce back to the office?
Interesting. Yeah, we are in agriculture, so we never closed down the agricultural side of the business, but being in wine and liquor, obviously from a South African point of view, it was big havoc over the last 6 months. Yeah. So yeah, it was initially with a hard lockdown, working from home as much as possible. I mean, nobody was at the office, but agriculture did continue. We closed our one small office in Cape Town, which is predominantly Salesforce occupied. But at the moment, everybody is back. So there's no negativity. I think the way we achieved it was from a leadership point of view through the whole COVID 6-month process has been to stay positive. Not only for yourself, but indirectly. I mean, you were quite a strong cog in many individuals' emotions and thought processes, and I think that to relay the fears of what's been going on made it easier for us to get everybody back at the office with no negative response. Maybe just something in a lighter note. I was positively tested about 2 months ago, and I got the result while I was at the office. And I called a few of my neighbouring offices, and before I made the third call to evacuate the premises, I mean, I don't think there was anybody left in the winery, and that's about 50 people. So that
Sure.
was like shooting a gun into a tree, and all the birds just leave like instantly. So it was actually very funny. And suddenly I was all alone before we went through the deep sanitizing process, etc. So, but we managed to get everybody back a couple of days later and relay the fears, and yeah, so it was just a funny moment.
Shame. It must feel like everybody wants to walk in like those Chernobyl suits around you.
It
Like,
was like that, yeah.
don't come close to me. Oh, shame. But luckily, I'm glad you made it through COVID and all of that in your family as well. So Nikkei, what's your view on it?
Yeah, I think, initially when we had the complete lockdown, our sites were completely shut down for a couple of months. And then in Nigeria, we had like an easing into the offices. We had like what's it called, curfew for extended hours, and that's been gradually reduced over time. So we've had our workers resume staggered for the past couple of months. And the biggest challenge we faced was health and safety. Obviously, that's our priority, to ensure that our employees are safe and providing enough PPE, ensuring that we're cleaning the offices and the sites on a frequent basis, and then coming up with schedules, rotas for mandatory staff to come in on a rota basis. So we limit the number of people in the office, whilst also using remote working for the other non-critical staff. So it's just really been being flexible with the times, having to adapt to the ever-changing situation. Again, our government have released another circular. It looks like schools will be resuming next week. It's just always keeping one's ear on the ground as to the latest regulation and the orders and things, but also ensuring and communicating to the staff that their welfare and their safety is our priority, and also keeping up with ensuring that the workplace is a safe place to work from.
Yeah, totally agree. So like you've mentioned, this is just in order to react quickly and intelligently, leaders must have the confidence to make decisions and act in an uncertain world, and the humility to consult wildly, recognize when they are wrong, and adjust course. In the face of such uncertainty, it is easy for leaders to grow overwhelmed, freeze, and struggle to make clear decisions and communicate them effectively. It's also difficult to make adjustments when conditions change. So we call this leaders must be humble heroes. So this is the first of the paradoxical leadership that we will be discussing tonight. So when you read through this, Nikkei and Phillip, did this resonate with you? I think, Nikkei, you already touched on it, so you can maybe start.
Yeah, definitely. I think this was the one that resonated the most with me. Having the confidence to act, like you said, in this very disruptive, uncertain world, but also being humble to know when wrong and to learn, right? And it feels like a spectrum where at some moments I'm required to be, on the left-hand side, humble, whereas other moments I'm required to be a hero. And it really does take a lot of wisdom to know when to act accordingly, especially in this very disruptive hour when no one knows tomorrow. I think we could all just be a bit more humble and communicate honestly with those that we're leading. But the truth is, there are some moments when being vulnerable with stakeholders, employees, can be catastrophic. And it's finding the right spaces to be humble with those that can actually be of support to, and be vulnerable with other leaders in similar situations as myself to learn from them. But then there are some moments where being vulnerable with employees actually creates a bond and fosters trust. So it's just really, it's extremely complicated, this whole humble hero phenomenon. But I found it extremely useful to be in communities of other leaders like myself, and to be vulnerable with them, whilst I'm able to be a bit more heroic with my team.
Yeah, that's wonderful that you're already living it. And Phillip, from your perspective?
Maybe touching on Nikkei's point about vulnerability and some of the earlier comments of empathy and resilience. I fully agree that a leader should show vulnerability at some stages, but I think during the last 6 months, if I showed vulnerability, it would have impacted the team employees right down the ladder. So although you might have felt the brunt of the uncertainty, I don't think it was the right time to show it. And but yeah, what typically would happen is someone would put their head in the sand and wait for a better day. Someone would become so it could be leaders or team members so busy or so nervous that they look busy but they don't achieve anything. So yeah, I think so. You had to stay calm and collected, and then that maybe links to your humble hero. And if I bring that back to the family business, where that fits in perfectly in a normal life, is that you have to give before you can get anything back. So you need to give more before you can expect any return. I think in a family business, that is, from a leadership point of view, absolutely crucial. As soon as you start demanding or wanting, you are going to create a lot of pitfalls in terms of relationship building in the larger family, whether it's second, third, or fourth generation. So I think that's where the humble hero fits well in a family business.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for bringing that back to the family as well. So for the both of you, did you have to consult widely? And did you have a shared leadership approach? So with your teams or with your management teams? Phillip, you can start first.
Are you referring in general or specifically now to the last 6 months?
To the last 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't really consult. I mean, obviously we all got to learn Zoom and Teams and webinars in a different level, but no, it was each one to itself to a large extent. I think it was so uncertain for anybody that no consultant would be able to give you the right advice. So being a medium-sized business and being nimble and able to adapt and having trust within your directors and your team, yeah, we definitely had to adapt, and maybe I'll touch on it later in terms of what we had to do. But no, it was going with your gut. I mean, your feeling here was more important than any long-term thinking.
Mm. And Nika, from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I touched on the fact that I'm part of a couple of leadership circles and communities, and I guess that's whom I consulted with this really challenging season. And they were really helpful in noticing that I was completely overstretched. And actually, during the season, it's been one of a lot of change for me. Like I mentioned at the start, I'm transitioning from an executive role to the chair of the family council. And actually, that I have had a very shared leadership approach with the family in focusing on the vision and mission. In co-creating the vision and mission for the family, as it's the first time, like I mentioned, that we're embracing formal governance. And ironically, this season showed us as a family that this was a great time not just to only work in the business, but to work on the business. And part of working on the business sometimes is working on the family. And so in creating that oneness within the family, I've really collaborated with my siblings, like I mentioned, co-creating a shared vision and mission, coming up with a strategic plan. And whilst I'm the chair, still creating an avenue for criticism and dialogue. I really believe that without co-creation, we will lack buy-in. And then doing a lot of storytelling with G1 as to why working on the family at this point in time is really important, because it's quite counterintuitive in the midst of an economic recession where one would think to focus on the business. And I've been quite critical in the business. Why would I be pulling out from the business into the family? And storytelling has been really important and critical in getting their buy-in as well. So Yeah, it's all just being a leader can be quite challenging. I do really believe in community. It's really helpful to be in community with other leaders. They can, help with those blind spots that we don't necessarily see, and they can be like our little board members and pour wisdom into us.
Yeah, no, I agree. So Phillip touched on resilience. So as leaders, how do you develop or maintain your resilience? This is a question from the audience. And do you have any specific routines that you follow? So do you have any tips to the audience, Phillip?
I think it's extremely difficult for a leader to join a new business and earn the respect of his or her team if you're coming from the outside. I mean, I've been fortunate that I've been in the business just after I finished my Pricewaterhouse article. So I started right at the bottom in a small scale business, and we grew operationally. We were the jack of all trades. Did the books, locked the door, drove the forklift, all those things initially. And so in my world, I fully understand over time every individual's position because I've almost done everything at some point in the business. And I think that definitely helps me understanding the individuals and their positions better. But if I was someone arriving from the outside and I had to take over my position tomorrow, that would be a different approach. And how do you then earn the respect of the team and the family and the rest of the board? And that would be it takes time. I don't think you need to be. You can be pushy. I just think you need to put your head down and work hard and understand the people and the business, and then reflect before you actually want to lead. I think the mistake that many people make in medium-sized businesses, I'm not talking about a big listed business, is that you come in guns blazing and then you make a lot of mistakes in the beginning. So first get a good feel, 3 to 6 months, and then you start implementing, and then again you build respect, and that maybe links back to the resilience.
Thanks, Phillip. Very true. Anika, from your perspective?
Yes, I agree completely with everything that Phillip said. When we're faced with very disruptive events, resilience is important, but I think it's a journey. And a lot of it is an inner resilience and working on, managing your thoughts, managing your mindset, and having enough conviction within yourself that whatever situation does confront you, you will be resourceful enough to sail through that season, right? And really building trust and bring ideas to the table in difficult situations. And then the basics: eating well, sleeping well, being very militant about boundaries and looking after self. It's only when we look after ourselves that we can actually have clarity of mind as to what to do in our businesses. And it's only then that we can have perspective, though we're in a crisis situation and a crisis season. We can't internalize that forever and blow things out of proportion. There's still opportunities in our businesses, and so that's what I would really recommend.
Wonderful. So we have another question from the audience. So how do you practically initiate and run 1G storytelling? She wants to encourage this in her family, but she's not sure how to arrange it, and she thinks it's very important. So Nika, I'm going to give that question to you first.
It's a great question. I think quite a lot of the time as G2, we've observed G1 the motive for the starting of the business was to put food on the table and to provide for the business. And so a lot of the effort and focus will be on business activities and the doing and the what. But really, we need to really sit back as G2 and reflect and think more strongly about the why. And so in, storytelling with G1, I really had to get very clear in my mind what was the real purpose behind the business, besides dollars and cents and catering to the family, what were the emotive reasons for the business? Because ultimately, we are emotional beings. We make decisions based on emotions, and then we use facts and logic to justify our reasons. And so, yeah, that was really how I did it, was to get very clear, who are we as a family? What was the purpose for which we set up this business, and what do we want to see in the next generation? And then really just keep speaking back to that and emphasizing that in order for us to cross this generational bridge and to leave this legacy that we desire to do, it's important that we start building and nurturing a strong family and not neglect that, and just focus on the business.
Yeah, that is the thing about the family business. It's the family and the business. And Phillip, how do you encourage speaking to the older generation?
Maybe you need to realize first, and that's part of our philosophy in trying to build on the legacy, is that you understand as a business and as a family that you are going to be in the next generation for as long as you can, and then it will be their problem to take it forward again. So we often use the words that we are custodians of time, and we also have an opportunity in time. So combining that, I think, builds the bridges between the different generations, and we live it, we talk about it, we understand it. It's always about we, it's not about me or I. And yeah, it certainly changes from one generation to the next. I mean, when we joined, it was fairly easy. It was operational. There was a gap for everyone. Now the business is bigger. It's more formal, slightly corporate, but you want to maintain the family values. So for the next generation, it's going to be more difficult to join and to enter the fray. So you need to create a platform for them to feel comfortable, but also challenged at the same time, because ultimately you are not protecting the business, you are protecting the individual in the process. Because if you can very easily set a family member up for failure just because of the fact that the person is a family member, you've got strong management, you've got strong peers, strong leaders within the business, and I think that's just how we think about it, and then how we implement flows from there.
Yeah, very, very true and very important. So another question from the audience. So adding to the previous question, in your families, what is the role of the previous generation in leading the family and or the business? How involved are they? So Nika, if you want to start.
Yes, so my father was the founder of the business. He just turned 58, so he's still relatively young. He's the managing director, CEO of the business. That's his world. I was the CEO of the family office, but he's the chair of the family office, and we take a lot of direction from him. But he hasn't had any formal structured governance, like I mentioned. So really, this is a huge change to start to institute family council, family assembly, and like I said, I'll be the chair of that. So yeah, my G1's heavily involved, especially on the business side. My mum's very behind the scenes, your typical woman in family business, puts out all the fights when we all start fighting each other. She's the one that reminds us that we're family and we should stay together. And she really is the glue behind the family. But yeah, G1 are still, my dad's still very, very active in the business.
And Phillip, in your family?
Yeah, we're very fortunate and blessed that our generation two, my dad and my uncle, are still with us. They're 75 and 80. They live on the farm, but they are not actively involved, and they haven't been actively involved for many years. So I always say that's a learning curve for me as to how they handed over the reins to our generation. They did it with fair comfort and ease, and they weren't very protected about their positions and their authority, and they gave us the wings to fly. And I think that will be important for us when we try to make the next generation fly. And I think that's maybe one of the mistakes many family businesses make. We always speak about the next generation and what will happen with them and how they will enter and what they need to do and build capacity. But we don't often enough speak about the current generation and how we are going to exit. And I think that often creates animosity and conflict, and maybe there's, yeah, you do it because of trust or you don't believe in the next generation. So yeah, we are very privileged that they are still with us, and then they are around and they snoop around and they are very interested, and we like that. But yeah, they are not. They don't have a desk, and they haven't had a desk for many years.
Very interesting, and two total different answers. So I would like to get the audience involved again. So we're gonna do Mentimeter. This is how it works. You'll see on the screen now. So you go type in www.menti.com. So if everyone on the call can do that now, and then you type in the code 7555234, and you will see a question on the screen. It says, what have been your biggest leadership challenge as a person in the past few months? And then as you start populating, I will get the results. So if you can do that now, I'm going to give you like 1-2 minutes you to log in and share your thoughts. And everyone on the panel, you can do it as well. So a lot of different answers, from government, cash flow, to loneliness, resilience, heavy responsibility, giving my team a sense of direction, time constraint, new contracts, funding, belonging, grief, execution, confidence. Wow, that is what leaders, that's what you need to deal with. So backing leaders, being rational, loyalty, being agile, staying positive. I think that's also a big one. In the eye of the storm, when you lead, you can't totally freak out, because that's not going to instill confidence in your employees. Acknowledging mistakes. That's the humble heroes that we've been speaking about. I see that the biggest one, you can see that the one in bold that says staying positive. Okay, and if we change that question, so the next question is, but if you've seen the biggest leadership challenges that you've observed in your family business, so not personally, but in your family business in the past few months. So keeping the family together and motivated, foreign exchange risk, conflict, cash flows, positivity again, supply chain, keeping people calm, like I said, conflict. Again, positivity is coming in quite strongly. Driving performance, adapting different views, keeping emotions in check. Remaining in business. Yes, that's a very big one. No, thanks everyone. That was really great, and thank you for sharing and taking part. So, Amara, from your perspective, what did you see in the businesses you consulted or the leaders you consulted with?
So I think, Andrea, I mean, actually the result of the polls, I think, is very much what we are seeing in terms of businesses. I think you can see on both the challenges personally and in the family, it's around that ability to stay positive and, to be someone that the organization can lean on and that they can trust you. So I think a lot around that in the last little while. And then I think the other thing that came true is that I think leaders have felt very lonely during this time because there were no answers. So I think what happened is leaders had to go out and and find new ways of surviving and sorting out supply chain. And you could go and talk to a whole lot of people, but nobody really had an answer for you. So at the end of the day, I think that's where the leader felt very lonely, and the whole organization was looking to them to say, okay, but you're the boss, so you tell us what to do. And that's the hero, kind of the humble hero side. But I think the humility was saying, well, I'm doing something here, but I actually don't even know if it's right. And in the past, I could go and ask somebody and they'd say, yes, I had the same kind of problem. This is what I did, and it worked. And I think in these last 6 months, there've been no answers. And I think that's where leaders have really struggled. And I think it's taken a huge personal toll on leaders, across all organizations. In fact, if you look at research, Andrea, what it's saying is that the people who are taking the most strain now are leaders who normally are very, very strong, very agile, and very resilient. It's almost that they didn't have much capacity left because they were already running at a 90%. And then COVID hit, and then there was all this uncertainty. So what we're saying is that what you need to be watching, as even if you're looking at your leadership teams in your family businesses, if you've got someone in that team that's always been amazing, always coped, phenomenal with stress, very resilient, that's the person to watch. Because those are the people who also are not going to come and tell you, I'm not coping, because there's an expectation on them to cope. But they're most probably critical to your business, and the impact of them, sort of falling over is going to be quite dramatic. So I think it's just that. It's about I think that lonely role, and it's been a lonely road, I think. And I think, Nike, you spoke very nicely to the importance of a network and the importance of having other leaders to go and talk to and bounce things off and kind of work out a way together. So I think we've seen a lot more reaching out of leaders. Maybe in the past you thought, this is my competition, I can't talk to them. And I think now we've seen industries band together, and together the industry's been able to get a solution. Whereas before that might have been a little bit of a barrier. So I think there's been a little bit of relaxing of that. And I don't know, Phillip and Nika, if you've seen that in your own industries, but certainly it's something that we've been observing.
Yeah, please share. What did you see the same thing?
Moira, that's spot on. I mean, leaders are normally lonely at the top, but you don't experience it because you've got a strong team around you, and then COVID arrives, and you have to be strong for everybody else. And I made a note of the emotions that I went through, and I think it applies to many others as well. Initially, we were very calm, pragmatic, accepted it for what it was. And then in our industry, being wine and liquor, the second lockdown, you became angry and upset because you didn't agree. And then the further lockdown, you became a rebel. And then that's still fine. And then I was very, very involved with our industry and fighting for our export ban to be lifted and local markets open. So I was involved literally at the forefront. And then you realize that no matter what you do, you're not going to get an answer. And when you become despondent, that's when the loneliness really creeps in. And I think that applies over different industries. So that was pretty much my emotions that I went through, and they were all fine until getting to that last one where you feel, I mean, no matter what you do now, there's nothing is going to change the irrational or illogical or the disagree decisions made by your government. So and then at the same time you have to stay positive for everybody else in the organization. So you're spot on. But it did bring the industry together. I mean, if I look at wine, beer, and spirits, for the first time, we were on the same page with many motivations and arguments and proposals put forward. So yes, that did bring that positive side again. So that networking made you feel slightly better about yourself.
It first sounded like the 5 stages of grief. That
Yeah, very similar to that. It's exactly very similar.
Exactly. Yeah. And then when you're despondent, you couldn't even drink wine, so that's problematic.
No, we've got enough.
He had wine. I'm sure he had wine.
I mean, maybe if I could just say one thing, Andrea, and I think it's sort of it maybe links to one of the questions that's come from the people on the call, but I think it's also around, what good has come out of the, COVID, and has there been innovation and all that stuff? I think is the question. which I'll leave for someone else to answer. But what I want to say is we mustn't forget the great lessons that we've learned here. So that power, for example, of beer, wine, and spirits all being on the same page, singing the same song. I mean, there's such power in that. And I hope that we don't go away from this COVID thing and sort of lose the good that's come out of it. I think it's about now harnessing that and making it part of your new normal.
Yeah, Nikkei, did you still wanted to add anything before we go on to the next question?
Yeah, Maura, just literally, your words were just so on point. I was that person in the family business, one that was the hero, was doing it all, and just completely overstretched. And I found myself, going through quite difficult personal situations. We lost a couple of people, and I just didn't have the emotional bandwidth to keep up and to take on as much work. And I had to really get very vulnerable with, I'm the perfectionist firstborn in the family that takes on so much responsibility. I had to sit down with my parents and be like, I'm not okay. I need to let things go. I need to delegate, and I need to pick my focus. I'm not this indelible hero. In the past, I would have shamed myself for that, for not being able to keep up. But I had a huge moment of clarity in my leadership circles where we were talking about life is all of the mountains and the valleys. And, the amount of time we spend in the mountains compared to the amount in the valleys, there's no extra waiting for the mountain compared to the valley. So we can't just put a band-aid over the valleys and hurry those seasons. We just have to go through them equally and be very self-compassionate. And really, by letting a lot go, I just feel like I've gained so much. By being vulnerable with my family, by being vulnerable with my leadership team, and with those leadership circles, I've really learned a lot about what my strengths are and where my focus should be. And in letting things go has enabled me to serve the family even better. And ultimately, that's the greatest barometer, is if anything will enable me to be a better servant leader, then that's something that I would take on board. So yeah, you said it so aptly in terms of the loneliness of leadership, and those that tend to be the ones that excel, they're usually the ones that would probably be suffering the most.
Thank you for sharing. That's amazing that you're sharing this. So another question from the audience. Was there any innovation that emanated from the crisis in your businesses or families? Phillip, you can start.
Yeah, it comes from Skalk. Ironically, I started sending out a weekly email to the whole team, and that's basically everybody that has an email address, from bottom right to the top. And I never did that before, and that brought a lovely sense of unity, keeping everybody informed, relaying their concerns. And in one of the emails, I actually mentioned that, you never waste a good crisis. So it resonates with me. And in our life, it was two things. That we've got non-alcoholic products, so we could take that gap, if I can put it that way, with our almost zero wine, 0% alcohol. And then the other win was online sales, and we were well positioned for that, and we really did very well in a short space of time with our online sales during this period. So yeah, so there were a few small wins, and that did keep some momentum going.
That's great. And Nika, in your business or in your family business?
I think we've had really just using more technology to become more efficient in the way we communicate. So using Zoom, even till now, we still use Zoom a lot, has persisted, even in spite of the fact that a lot of our staff are back in the office. And we use more virtually rendered support services, as it became very clear that the world is a lot smaller than we originally thought. And so we have people working on social media, branding and things from all over the world now supporting us. And also it's led us to really have a change in the way we think about people management. we've thought long and hard about positioning our business for sustainability. And we've all agreed now that this is the right time to bring on board outsiders onto the board of the business to bring a fresh perspective, given the huge extent of challenges that we're seeing in this VUCA adapt world, as PwC will term it. We really do need to collaborate more than ever before. And so we're rolling out a process of, recruiting external board members onto the operating businesses and in our family office. So we haven't seen innovation in your traditional sense in terms of like process innovation or product service innovation, but I think we've seen a lot of rethinking the way our approaches and the way we manage people.
Yeah, that is super important. And sometimes you don't take the time to actually focus on that. So that's definitely also something good that came out of the whole situation. So as government instituted policies were rolled out, it was crucial for leaders to rally people to change their behaviors and take collective action. To limit and repair the damage from COVID-19, leaders had to understand the big picture. So the nature of the pandemic, its global implications, possibility of a range of outcomes, while mastering the granular details of stabilizing company operations, getting supply chains working again, and ensuring that team members were able to work remotely. So in other words, there had to be really good strategic executors. So that's another one of the paradoxical leadership topics. So in deciding on a strategy during this time, can you maybe give us an example or tell us where your family business had to look at the bigger picture as well as diving into the detail when having to implement changes and make decisions?
Yeah, I mean, our world changed in March, and we didn't know how long it changed for, how far reaching, and it was really difficult. In our sector, majority of our clients are state governments in Nigeria, and we didn't know to what extent COVID will affect their liquidity positions. And so we were thinking ahead, how can we shift our business so that we will thrive long term? But at the same time, we had fires to fight, right? Daily decisions to make. Are we putting people on stood off? Are they going on furlough? Who are we laying off? How are we going to pay rent? And with so much uncertainty, it was really difficult. But we chose to fight those urgent issues whilst also looking ahead to where our world is heading. And we had begun a process of diversifying our client base prior to COVID, looking at international expansion. But obviously during COVID, it was quite difficult to pursue international opportunities because you couldn't travel. And in our industry, it's still very much face-to-face. But we chose to look critically at our investments as a family. So our investments and often will support the family during difficult crises such as this. We wouldn't have been able to survive this period without our investments and other economic crises that we've been through, without other sources of income. So we started to look at what industries will be viable tomorrow, like in the future. And we actually made an investment into digital banking. So I think that's an example of having to be that strategic executor that you mentioned.
Yeah, definitely. And Philip, from your perspective on your side.
Yeah, we're not long-term believers of a 10-year strategy, but ironically, we are in agriculture, and when you plant a vine or a fruit tree, that is a 25-year view that you take on that industry. So on the one hand, you have to think long-term, but in that time, trends will change, supply and demand will change, export markets will change, local. So yeah, it's actually the business model works generally speaking on a long-term strategy for agriculture, but in the interim it's very much shorter. So and I prefer to have a 3-year outlook and not a 25-year outlook, and that definitely helped us during this pandemic. We almost went from a position where you know the term zero budget, so you start from scratch. And that's what we did even before the president's speech on the 23rd of March. I think a week before we sat and we knew there was something going to happen, but we didn't know at that point that wine would be closed for 15 out of the 26 weeks.
Yeah.
But we did act quickly, and we implemented quite a few big decisions early, and it's almost as if you had to have a month-to-month strategy and evolve with what was happening internationally and on the local market. And today, 6 months later, we have to adapt that again because the structural situation in the industry has changed completely from a supply and demand position. So you can have a strategy, but you can't sit in it. It's yeah, you have to adapt.
I think being agile and again resilient in this time is extremely important, and that's what we've seen as one of the strengths of family businesses, being able to make quick decisions and sit around the table and deciding okay, what are we going to do next, because like you said, it's so fluid. It changes all the time. Last night we had the president's speech again, so as organizations adjusted to new realities, technology played an important role. And in many cases, technology platforms that already exerted immense influence on society saw their power, reach, and value grow rapidly. But there are instances in which technology does not contribute to the society. So when considering how to best to leverage technology for good of humanity, leaders must be able to bridge the gap between the raw power of tech and the needs of people, and be as fluent with emotional intelligence as they are with artificial intelligence. Nowhere is society's need for such technology-savvy humanists more obvious than in the vast education complex, which touches the lives of billions of people daily. So we should take care to ensure that human needs are not disregarded, even though technology might be very convenient and practical. So just going back to the whole technology and innovation question, did technology play a big role in your businesses during this time? And did you have to make any changes to how you approach things from a technology perspective, Phillip?
No, not significantly, other than what's happened to all of us in terms of this type of platform. So it's definitely assisted. I mean, you find your way fairly easy over Zoom and Teams, as I've said before. I think the challenge within that form of technology in our environment is that we believe that you build relationships on trust and mutual respect, and it's slightly more difficult over this platform. It's easy for a webinar like this, but when you really want to negotiate and want to sell something or build trust, it's easier for the customer to push back, and more difficult for you to convince. So that brings a new challenge in how you manage yourself via technology. It's definitely a different approach from a personal point of view versus a personal interaction. So yes, positive, but I think challenging going forward from a relationship point of view.
Yeah, I completely agree. I can't wait we can have these NextGen Club meetings in person again, or just a lot of the other meetings, and not the screen. And Nikkei, from your perspective?
Yeah, similar to Phillip. I mean, it's not been a complete game changer, but it's just enabled easier communications. It hasn't been a huge driver of the business, and our clients have been. And I think the difficulty of managing the human needs is a very, very real one. My PA, for instance, he's based in the Philippines now, and we communicate a lot on Slack, Asana, Zoom, and all these wonderful, great technology tools that are great for efficiency, but you can almost become quite robotic. So what we do is we try to bring each other into our daily experiences. So for instance, if he helps me with a piece of work, I will show him the completed work and me using it. Say, for instance, take a picture of me presenting it to my family, or if he's having a difficult time with his family and say he's unwell, he'll send me pictures of himself not feeling well, just to create that human touch. And we ask after each other's families and take time to talk about what's going on in our worlds. So yeah, I think it's just being mindful of the fact that technology can make us a little bit robotic and lose touch of our human needs. and just keeping the avenues of communication open such that we can talk about the human stuff and be flexible.
Yeah. So another question from the audience. So do you think that your teams have lost a sense of belongingness over the last few months due to the use of technology? And then also technology has created a lot of efficiency in the way we do things. How are you going to balance this going forward, i.e. using tech versus balancing human interaction? So maybe if we start with the first question, just have you seen your teams lost a sense of belongingness because of technology? Nika, you can start.
I would definitely say so, because we used to see each other all the time, and we used to have socials and, you know, these gatherings where we'd be able to just loosen up a little bit more and talk about our families and things. And we used to have coffees in the office, and all these now it's a lot more difficult to do. I mean, one can be intentional about them, like try to translate them onto Zoom, and but it's still not the same. I think when we do go back into the office, it's really to be very intentional about ensuring that we don't stay to this back-to-back Zoom lifestyle or Teams lifestyle, and we really do carve spaces to bond.
Yeah, and Phillip?
Well, without a doubt, I think specifically in from our side, individuals that work in sales, that travel often, that go on the road, that interact, that's not part of the, say, the office and the manufacturing environment, and individuals get a lot of energy from other people in the process, and that was now lost. So it's also not one size fits all. It's important to understand different individuals and their personalities, whether they're introverts, extroverts, or ADD or OCD, and all those. And if you understand that, then you can manage it much better. And obviously also depending on their own family setup, so the size of the family, the age of the kids, that all, it plays a different part in everyone's life, but definitely a sense of belongingness has been lost.
I'm just quickly going to open another poll. So for everybody on the call, please complete it. And then just the second part of the question, and just how are you going to balance that going forward? Maybe the efficiencies that came through, but now when we go back, or for Phillip, you said you guys are back already. So Nika, maybe on your side, just using tech and balancing the human interaction.
Yeah, ironically, Andrea, it definitely helps with efficiencies, but you also now almost overloading yourself, because I think everybody on the call will say that they are organizing meetings back to back. So although you save a lot of time, you are arranging more, and that means that it's effective, but it still needs to be implemented afterwards. So it's not as if you are saving time; you're burning the midnight candle almost more, because you're putting more pressure on yourself. So that's actually a bit of a double jeopardy, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Yeah, completely agree. I think as soon as we're able to live life normally, we need a team retreat, a team bonding day, definitely. And like Phillip said, I think in this time, it's so easy to you're so efficient and you just have back-to-back meetings. We've almost forgotten what it's like to have space in our days, you know, and to just program those knowledge sharing sessions, those sessions where reflective sessions, those monthly meetings that we got into the groove of having, that have kind of slipped now in this kind of firefighting mode. Those are really important in creating, forming stronger teams and socializing outside of work as well.
Yes, I think there's going to be a lot of socials, or when we can do it again, in more teams. I see there's a lot of, what is that, Jerusalem, those challenges going around and for team building. So another question from the audience, So do your businesses intend on adopting certain virtual interactions more permanently? And if so, which ones, to what extent? Or do you think, post-COVID, everything will just go back to normal like it was? Phillip, you can start.
I think the new word being used in many arenas is like omni-channel. So you're going to find a good balance between the historic way of doing things and the last 6 months. And I think every industry and every person will find that new normal within him or herself over time. So to say it's going to be X, I don't think there's something definite yet, but there will be a good blend and balance of before and post. Yeah. And naturally you'll tend to go back to what it was, just the nature of people, but you'll maintain something of what we've learned the last 6 months.
Yeah, definitely. Annika?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, in our sector, a lot of our interaction with clients is face-to-face and purely offline. Sales and marketing activities can't really be done online. And the only thing that we can do online or optimize technology for is just that internal communication. So I do see that omni-channel concept being applied in our situation, especially where we have multiple sites across the country. Usually we try to come together a couple of times in the year. And I can see, that probably being reduced to leveraging technologies to reduce the cost of flying in and seeing each other and things. But I think there's nothing that really beats face-to-face. There's nothing like face-to-face.
No, sure, definitely agree. So the last section, because I see we're running out of time, it's been so interesting, and thank you for all the questions from the audience as well. So achieving a successful organizational redesign requires leaders who are sufficiently savvy to influence a broader set of stakeholders while also building essential levels of trust, like you've mentioned. In order to make changes that are both meaningful and last, we need high integrity politicians. That's the next one of the paradoxes. So climate and sustainability are among the arenas in which ideals and politics come together. So the tone of the discussion is being set by many business leaders, including Larry Fink, so he's the CEO of asset manager BlackRock, who resolutely incorporating climate risk into investing decisions and urging corporate leaders to reassess their core assumptions about modern finance. So how are you as a collective and your business building trust in your communities?
Well, one of the things that's come out of this is that we've decided that we have to focus internally first, and that means obviously your business, but also in your local community. So it's easy to want to assist and help and reach out far, but you have to take care of your environment close to you, I think, first and foremost, and that's one of the takeaways when we have done that. So I think that's one of the positive takeaways. As a leader and as a family business, you lead by example, so you have to stay positive, even if the dialogue or conversation goes negative. You're allowed to divulge there, but I think it's important from a not only a business point of view, but a relationship point of view, through your full employment and management team into the community to stay positive. And what we've done, as I've said before, is communicated openly from week one. We've really almost laid it bare and said this is how it is, but in spite of that, I didn't try to focus at any of the negativity that we saw in the media. I just tried to focus on our position, our realities, and I tried to give it a silver lining every time. And then you have to realize that you can't reach everywhere. It is, no matter what you think of yourself, it is, you have to understand your limitations.
That is the start of wisdom, I would say. Thanks, Phillip. And Nikkei, from your perspective?
Yes, I completely agree. I think listening to the local community is key. So just creating an avenue to have ears and really know what it is that they need and how best you can support them where it is feasible. We do need wisdom, especially in Africa. A lot of our communities are so badly hit by the pandemic, and there are lots of needs everywhere. But I think if we are approachable, that will really help in building trust. And then being people of integrity and being companies of integrity, not promising what we can't do, being realistic with what we do promise, so we don't come across as politicians. No offense to any politicians. And serving communities where we don't necessarily stand to gain anything from it. We really show that we see ourselves as with the community and support the community, and looking to build long-term relationships as opposed to just transactional ones really does help.
Yeah, thanks for that, Nika. So just quickly, some results of the polls. So the question was, are you already experiencing some of these leadership contradictions? And majority said yes. And the other question was, does your business invest in any climate change initiatives or sustainability practices? And majority also said yes. So as a final question, I'm also going to open the last poll. Do you have, for everyone on the panel, some just closing advice or remarks for the next gens on the call?
Yeah, it will differ for all of us, but you in a family business, very important, I've said it before, is before you want to take something out of the business, you have to put in a heck of a lot, especially if you believe in the legacy that you are building. Yeah, and we all grow as individuals. When you are young, you run hard, you work in your silo, you're focused, and maybe your people skills aren't that well developed. And I think it's important to continuously reach out and learn from others in the process, broaden your horizons, become involved, not only at the community level, but on an industry level. And that will make you a stronger individual. And that will, I think, well, it will definitely help you to earn the respect from your peers and your business, and also in this conversation from your family. And yeah, that's just, I would think, a short summary. Could be much more, but now that's fine.
Thanks, Phillip. And Nika?
Yeah, I think as young leaders in the culture where there's a lot of male dominance and age dominance, really trying to learn to lead by, persuasion as opposed to position, because we can't really win that game of leadership through positional leadership, as there are others that the position more by virtue of their age and experience. And, I think it's to really do that inner leadership work, get very clear on your individual purpose, your why, and once you do so and you align your actions, your behaviors with your inner self, I really believe that it does give you the power that is magnetic and is extremely influential with those around you. So yeah, just working on inspiration as a mode to transform and influence people as opposed to position would be really helpful for us as NextGen.
Thanks, Nika. And Mara?
So maybe just to touch back on the paradoxes, and that's to just, leave the next gen people to think about, is that, in the past you were able to say, well, I'm good at strategic things, I'm not a good executor, or I'm good at being a hero, I'm not good at being humble. And I think what we're saying is that you actually need to build skills in all of the sides of the paradox. I think, Nika, you said, you sometimes struggle to know where you need to be on the continuum of humble hero, for example. And it's not that you need to be humble or you need to be a hero. You actually, as a leader, need to have capability in all of them. Now, it's unlikely that you're going to be strong in all 6 of those, but you certainly need to, and you're going to have let's say, a preference to be strong in some of them. But there are skills that you have to work on all of those skills. So you can't get away with saying, I'm not going to be innovative, because that could be the death of the organization. But it's about trying to balance it. And I think if you're looking at your leadership teams, to look at some kind of a profile that you've got a nice balance of all of those attributes of the 6 paradoxes, and then that should be good for any pandemic that's coming our way and any sort of crisis and uncertainty that we know is going to be, you know, part of our reality going forward. So yeah, that would be my parting thought.
Sure. Thank you. That's amazing. The 3 of you, thank you so much. It was lovely having this discussion, and thank you for sharing your thoughts and your experience. And yeah, it's been amazing. I've certainly enjoyed it a lot. And also for the audience, thank you for participating and asking questions. And we hope to see you at the next one. So have a good evening and keep safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Everyone.